11 years ago, when I was 27 and she was about 30, things took a turn. We had been living together as partners for 8 years at that point and had a 2-year-old son. Now, I'm 38 and my wife is 41. We've been together for 19 years, married for 11 of those. Our family has grown to include a son who's 8 and a daughter who's 6. During the first 8 years of living together, we had our share of ups and downs, but we always managed to stick together and fight for our relationship. Despite some challenges, we were incredibly close and didn't face any major issues. Before I met her, I was coming out of a 4-year relationship where my ex had cheated on me. Because of that, trusting fully was difficult for me. Interestingly, she was in a brief relationship with someone else for about a month before we got together. They didn't get a chance to really build anything because she moved to my area right after accepting his offer. She told me there wasn't much of a connection between them, which I found intriguing, especially since she accepted me while still involved with him. Eventually, she ended things with him when she was back in her hometown because of me. Even though trusting her was a challenge, I gave her my full trust once we started living together and had a child. I felt confident in her loyalty, given that she was busy caring for our child and was a devoted partner and mother. The trouble began when she decided to return to work. At that time, I had stopped working to finish my last year of college. We agreed that my mother would look after our child while she worked and I studied. My mother lived quite a distance away, so taking our son to her meant a full day of travel. We stayed with my mother for a month before returning home together. Everything seemed fine as she worked and I studied, but after 6 months we decided it was time to bring our son back home. This time, I went alone to retrieve him while she stayed behind. I spent 3 weeks with my mother before coming back with our son. During my absence, my wife was alone in our apartment. By then, issues had started cropping up with her job, as her colleagues often went out for drinks after work. This led to frequent arguments between us, because she began to act entitled and stubborn. I repeatedly asked her to steer clear of these outings, but she insisted she was safe, since she was with friends and her cousins, who also worked with her. While I was away, we kept in touch daily through calls and texts, so nothing seemed out of the ordinary. When I finally returned with our son after spending 3 weeks at my mother's place, I noticed she was unusually affectionate and more energetic in bed than she had been before. I figured she was just expressing how much she had missed me during my absence, and I was more than willing to embrace this renewed intimacy. A month later, something unsettling happened. I heard a text message come through on her phone, and my curiosity got the better of me. I decided to check the message, and what I saw made my heart drop. The message was from someone at her workplace, and her response was, "Stop texting me here. My live-in partner might read it." At that moment, I felt a cold wave of panic. My knees went weak, and I felt an empty, painful void in my chest. It was as if I couldn't catch my breath. She quickly dashed over to grab the phone, but I managed to keep it out of her reach. I demanded to know who this person was and why she was so concerned about me seeing their messages. She claimed the person was nothing important and tried to brush it off, saying she needed to go to her sister's house to get her hair done for the company Christmas party later that evening. I told her she couldn't take her phone with her, suspecting that there was more to this than she was letting on. After she left, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. I decided to reply to the number myself, hoping to uncover the truth. To my surprise, I received a response from a woman who identified herself as the partner of the guy my wife had been texting. This woman was understandably upset and told me she suspected an affair between my wife and her partner. She had been harboring doubts for some time, and the text messages she had seen that morning seemed to confirm her fears. Desperate for clarity, I asked if we could meet in person so I could read the messages myself. She agreed, and I took our son to my partner's sister's house, where my wife was also getting her hair done for the party. I told my wife I was meeting someone and that she would need to explain everything when I returned. When I finally met the woman, who turned out to be the partner's girlfriend, my heart was racing. She allowed me to read all the text messages between my wife and her partner. The messages were filled with innuendo and seemed to suggest a much closer relationship than she had admitted. To make matters worse, she recounted a specific night when her partner hadn't come home. Someone had seen them together, drinking, dancing, and having an incredible time, looking like more than just friends. This was especially gut-wrenching because it was during the 3 weeks I had been away with our son. I was in shock, unable to process the betrayal. The partner's girlfriend had confronted my wife at work, but my wife had denied everything, claiming nothing happened that night. She said she had only asked for a ride home because she couldn't find a cab. Naturally, neither I nor the girlfriend believed that flimsy excuse. After thanking her for her help and apologizing for the trouble, I returned home with a heavy heart. That evening, after my wife came back from the Christmas party, I confronted her. The conversation was emotionally charged and heart-wrenching. I pleaded with her to tell me the truth, to explain what had really happened, but she remained steadfast in her denial, insisting that nothing had occurred. I was overwhelmed with a mix of anger and sadness, struggling to come to terms with the fact that she might have been involved in this kind of mess. At that moment, I was furious and distraught, seriously contemplating the possibility of leaving her. For some reason, we never ended up separating, with our son being the primary reason for that decision. My wife continued to insist that nothing inappropriate happened between her and the guy that night. According to her, he simply dropped her off at our gate and left immediately. Even though a part of me suspected there was more to the story, I decided to accept her explanation and try to move forward. I made a concerted effort to bury the entire incident deep in my mind, pushing it out of my thoughts as much as I could. During this period, I fell ill, which added another layer of complexity to our situation. I needed her support more than ever to take care of me, and she was there for me during my sickness. She remained in her job for another year before finally deciding to resign. Throughout that year, she assured me repeatedly that she had severed all ties with the guy after the incident. She claimed that she had completely avoided him at work and had even been careful to steer clear of him before our confrontation. I chose to believe her, given that I had access to all her devices and saw that she had stopped going out for drinks with her coworkers after work. A couple of years later, I heard the news that the guy had died in a motorcycle accident. It was peculiar to me that my wife didn't seem to show any noticeable reaction to his death. It struck me as odd, but I took it as a sign that maybe she had truly moved on from the situation. We managed to put the past behind us, and soon after, she became pregnant with our second son. We got married that year, and life seemed to return to a semblance of normalcy. Even though things appeared to be on track, there were moments during arguments when I would bring up the issue of her deceased affair partner to gain an advantage. Each time, she would become defensive and implore me to let the man rest in peace. Then, nearly a month ago, we had yet another argument, and I decided to revisit the topic. Her reaction was intense. She became furious and demanded to know when I would stop bringing it up. My instincts told me something was off, so I decided to push the issue a bit further. I told her that someone had seen them arrive at our apartment that night. According to my fabricated story, the guy had stayed until morning, with his motorcycle parked outside the entire time. In reality, no one had told me this, but I wanted to gauge her reaction. She looked genuinely shocked and immediately asked who had given me this information and why she was only hearing about it now. I lied again, saying that it was a new neighbor who knew me, but whom she didn't recognize. Her defensiveness resurfaced as she admitted that she had let him inside the apartment, but only because he asked for a glass of water. She claimed he stayed briefly and left soon after. Noticing the inconsistencies in her story, I felt a glimmer of hope that I might finally get to the truth. I asked her how long he stayed, and she maintained it was just a few minutes. I then told her she was lying, insisting that my friend had seen him stay until morning and that the motorcycle had been parked outside all night. This revelation caused her to start hyperventilating, a sign that my words had struck a nerve. Desperate for answers, I directly asked her if they had been intimate that night. She vehemently denied it, insisting that they only kissed and engaged in some light fondling while embracing because she was drunk. She claimed that was the extent of their physical interaction. When I pressed her further, she confessed that he had tried to advance things, but she refused because she was thinking about me. She was visibly distressed, on the brink of tears, and kept repeating that nothing significant had happened. I was still not convinced and continued to press for more information. As we went around in circles with her denying everything, I decided to try a different approach. I told her that I was willing to accept her version of events, that nothing happened, if she could look me in the eye and swear that it was true. I told her that if she was lying, she was making me the most miserable man in the world, and that God was aware of the pain she was causing me. I expressed my vulnerability, tears streaming down my face, and pleaded with her to show me some respect and love by not lying to me while I was at my most exposed. I told her that if there was anything left to confess, she should do it now. I assured her that I was prepared to forgive her if she admitted the truth and apologized for her actions. I offered her a chance to come clean and made it clear that I was ready to offer forgiveness if she laid everything out honestly. I wanted to create a safe space for her to confess, hoping that it would encourage her to be truthful and that we could finally put this painful chapter behind us. After deciding to probe further into what transpired that night, she clung firmly to her initial story. She repeated her claims that nothing of consequence occurred, once more offered her apologies, and pleaded with me to forgive her and stay in our marriage. She described how her years of deceit had taken a severe toll on her mental health. The guilt of her actions had been a constant burden, leading to debilitating anxiety and depression. She portrayed her inner suffering as an ongoing, relentless struggle, emphasizing how the weight of her dishonesty had eroded her well-being over the years. Her primary justification for maintaining the lie for over a decade was her intention to shield me from pain and to prevent the collapse of our family. She was deeply concerned about the impact that a separation would have on our children, fearing that they would be the ones to suffer the most if we were to split up. She acknowledged the profound disrespect and breach of trust involved in allowing him into our home and participating in whatever happened between them. Her remorse was palpable, as she described her actions as a serious and unplanned mistake, which she attributed to him taking advantage of her vulnerability. Despite her reassurances, she insisted that she had no romantic feelings for him, portraying it as a regrettable lapse in judgment rather than anything more significant. She went so far as to reveal that she had considered confiding in her sister about the affair and even thought about reporting him, feeling pressured and fearful. However, she ultimately decided against pursuing these options out of concern that discovering the truth would only make matters worse. As I listened to her, my skepticism continued to grow. Her insistence that she had no feelings for him was becoming increasingly difficult to believe. She explained that they had worked closely together, and he often demonstrated interest by bringing her food and asking about her well-being. She admitted that she might have developed a slight affection for him due to the attention he provided, but vehemently denied that it was love. She described her feelings as more of an appreciation for his company and the attention he showed her, rather than genuine romantic attraction. Nearly a month after uncovering the affair, we were attempting to stabilize things for the sake of our children. Despite our efforts, I made it clear that I was still uncertain about our future. Although I had initially promised to forgive her if she confessed, I found myself struggling to keep that promise. Forgiveness was proving to be much more challenging than I'd anticipated. To address this, we began a nightly routine of sharing therapy. Each of us had a designated time to speak and share our thoughts and feelings without interruption, while the other person was expected to listen attentively and reflect on what was shared. This therapeutic practice proved to be both revealing and emotionally taxing. I asked her to provide a comprehensive timeline of their interactions, and she detailed everything she could remember: lunch dates, private conversations, and even the fact that he had asked her to leave me and be with him. I used this opportunity to articulate my thoughts and emotions regarding her disclosures. The process of sharing and reflecting uncovered new details that had not been previously revealed, providing a clearer picture of what had transpired. While these sessions offered some clarity, they also triggered profound episodes of hurt and anger. My mind fixated on the newly revealed details, causing me to relive the pain and frustration from that night. Despite the relief of finally knowing the specifics rather than remaining in the dark, the process was emotionally exhausting. During these moments of deep hurt, she remained supportive and transparent, which helped me begin to accept her gradually. She agreed to all of my conditions and adhered to the steps I proposed to improve our relationship. Despite my initial fears that her pride and ego might hinder our progress, she endured and complied with my requests. However, she set one clear boundary. She could not handle it if I found another woman and developed feelings for her. Our relationship continues to experience fluctuations, but I am starting to envision a future with her. I am learning to see her with renewed perspective, but the pain still lingers whenever I think about what happened with him. Even though he has been dead for some time, I continue to wrestle with feelings of jealousy and hurt. Watching videos or seeing images that remind me of their night together is particularly painful. I find myself questioning whether it is normal to still feel this way, even after his death, and whether there is a possibility for me to fully forgive her. Given the gravity of everything that has happened, I am left wondering if she genuinely deserves a second chance, and if our relationship can truly recover from this deep and painful wound. The emotional aftermath of this betrayal is complex and multifaceted. I'm grappling with the remnants of my trust, trying to reconcile the person I thought I knew with the reality of what she did. It's a struggle to move past the hurt, while also attempting to rebuild a semblance of normalcy for our family. The ongoing tension between wanting to forgive and the lingering pain creates a turbulent emotional landscape. Despite her efforts to make amends, the shadow of the affair continues to loom large, making it challenging to envision a future free from the scars of the past. As I navigate this difficult path, I am left questioning whether true healing and forgiveness are possible, and whether our relationship can ultimately overcome the damage inflicted by her actions and the presence of the other man. We're actively working through our reconciliation process, and I've come to understand just how pivotal time is in navigating the complexities of healing from such deep wounds. After much deliberation, I chose to remain in the relationship and give it another chance, albeit with significant modifications to our dynamic. To ensure that we address any potential issues head-on, we've established a clear and structured plan. One of the most substantial changes we've agreed upon is the introduction of a pass, a conditional allowance that gives me the right to pursue another relationship if I feel it becomes necessary. This pass can be used at any moment, particularly if I sense a lack of earnest effort on her part regarding our reconciliation. The only condition attached is that she must be informed if I decide to utilize it. This measure is meant to promote transparency and prevent any further misunderstandings or deceit from festering. She's agreed to allow me full access to all her devices and to notify me immediately if anyone shows romantic interest in her, whether at her workplace or elsewhere. This level of openness is intended to address and mitigate any issues related to infidelity before they escalate, ensuring that we maintain a clear and honest path forward. This is her one chance to prove her commitment to making our relationship work, as there will be no opportunity for a second chance if things go awry. Her commitment to making amends and helping us rebuild our relationship has been evident, but I still struggle with deep-seated pain every time I reflect on the betrayal. Although the acute anguish has diminished somewhat since the initial shock, I continue to express my feelings and remind her of the damage caused by her actions. I've asked her to undertake specific tasks to support our healing process, and she has complied without complaint, with one notable exception. We've chosen to keep our marital issues private, with no one from either side of the family being aware of the situation. I am convinced that her infidelity was rooted in selfish motivations, so I devised a test to confront this aspect of her character. From what I know of her, she places a high value on her reputation among our friends and family. To test her sincerity, I asked her to confess her infidelity to both of our parents. The agreement was that they would keep this information confidential and offer their advice on how we might proceed with our reconciliation. When I proposed this test, the genuine fear and distress in her eyes at the prospect of both our parents learning about her betrayal were palpable and profoundly revealing. She has conveyed that this is the most challenging request I've ever made of her. She has suggested that we should keep the situation private and manage it ourselves, but I've insisted that she must prove her commitment to repairing our relationship by agreeing to this step. Since I view her selfishness as the primary issue, I wanted her to confront it by making the ultimate sacrifice, revealing her infidelity to our parents. Although I initially considered involving all of our family and friends, I opted to limit the confession to our parents to preserve some measure of dignity and to focus on the reconciliation process itself. I needed her to demonstrate her willingness to make this significant sacrifice for the sake of our relationship. She ultimately agreed to the request, though she asked for some time to confess to her own parents before approaching mine. I assured her that if she followed through, it would be a crucial step toward rebuilding our relationship. In return, I promised to forego my pass and to concentrate solely on her. I made it unequivocally clear that while I might be able to forgive her on some level, the act of cheating itself remains fundamentally unforgivable and unacceptable in any relationship. The betrayal might be something I can work through, but it fundamentally alters the dynamics of trust and love. For those who have successfully navigated reconciliation, I'm keen to learn what tests or conditions you found essential to determine if your marriage was worth salvaging. I've considered numerous factors, including our children and the nearly 2 decades we've spent together, despite the dishonesty that tainted more than half of that time. Even though she lied for over a decade, I believe she is genuinely remorseful and has devoted herself to me and our family since the affair. All of our children are biologically mine, and we've tested negative for any STDs. While the betrayal was deeply painful and the deception significant, I recognize that time is a critical factor in processing and healing from such experiences. Life encompasses more than just focusing on the negatives, and starting anew isn't always the best solution for everyone. To those who have experienced similar betrayals, especially men, I deeply empathize with your pain. It's important to allow yourself to feel hurt and to grieve the betrayal. I hope we all find the peace we need and are able to rebuild our love and trust, no matter how challenging that process may be. I want to believe that healing is possible and that, despite the immense difficulties, there can be a path forward that allows us to move beyond the hurt and to rebuild something meaningful from the ruins of betrayal. I'm trying to hold on to hope that with time, honesty, and continued effort, we can find a way to repair the damage and forge a renewed connection that honors both the past and the future we're working to rebuild. Reconciliation, as I've come to understand, is not just about overcoming the immediate fallout of betrayal, but also about addressing the deeper issues that led to it. It requires ongoing effort, patience, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. I'm learning to navigate this challenging terrain, understanding that it's a journey marked by both setbacks and progress. My commitment to this process is rooted in a desire to restore trust and build a future that acknowledges and learns from the past while striving for a healthier and more honest relationship. The road ahead may be long and fraught with challenges, but I'm hopeful that with continued effort and mutual dedication, there's a possibility for redemption and renewal in our relationship. 3 months have passed since the day I uncovered the affair, and we've made significant strides, particularly in terms of transparency and accountability. She has now confessed to both sets of parents, which was an enormous and difficult step for her. While it was clear from the outset that the reaction from both sides of the family would be charged with disappointment, I believe their support for our attempt at reconciliation was apparent. My own parents were understanding, and since I had already briefed them on the affair, they were prepared for the conversation. They listened to her apology, accepted it, and have emphasized the need for her to earn back my trust. Importantly, they advised that the children should remain unaware of the affair, which was in line with our shared goal of shielding them from the fallout. On her side of the family, however, I have lingering doubts. I wasn't present when she spoke to her parents, only waiting in a nearby room. Afterward, they joined me, and my wife relayed that she had made the confession. Their reaction was notably muted. They chose not to discuss the matter further. While I understand that discussing such sensitive issues can be uncomfortable, the lack of dialogue leaves me questioning whether she truly shared the full extent of the affair with them. She assured me that she did provide all the necessary details and that they were shocked and perplexed by her actions, given that things seemed stable between us at the time. She claimed that their advice mirrored that of my parents, resolve the issue for the sake of the children. Despite this, the silence and their reluctance to engage in an open discussion about the matter raised concerns about whether her parents were fully informed. Despite this step towards reconciliation, my sense of dissatisfaction persists. The emotional scars from the betrayal are still raw, and triggers continue to evoke feelings of hurt and distrust. My past remains a safety net that I'm prepared to use if necessary, although I hope it never comes to that. I've been applying a true remorse test to evaluate her commitment to our reconciliation. Out of the 6 conditions I set, she has successfully met 3, demonstrating patience, owning up to her bad decisions by confessing to our parents, and taking financial responsibility. Each of these actions represents a significant part of the process, showing that she is making an effort to rectify her wrongs. However, there are still 3 conditions that I am monitoring closely: her full honesty, her proactive engagement in reconciliation efforts, and her overall attitude towards me and our children. These are crucial for determining whether her remorse is genuine. I need to see consistent efforts and sincere changes in these areas before I can fully commit to the reconciliation process and possibly move past the hurt. Her commitment to meeting these conditions is essential not only for the healing of our relationship, but also for rebuilding the trust that was shattered. I am vigilant about assessing her actions and responses, and I am open to the possibility of gradually moving forward if she can prove that she is genuinely working towards making amends. Trust is something that takes time to rebuild, and while we have made progress, I am still cautious and attentive to the nuances of her behavior and our interactions. Ultimately, this process is about more than just regaining trust. It's about understanding whether we can create a future together that acknowledges the past while striving for a healthier, more honest relationship. The journey is challenging, filled with setbacks and moments of introspection, but I am committed to seeing it through. For those who have navigated similar situations, I welcome insights into what tests or conditions were instrumental in gauging the sincerity of your partner's remorse and whether they contributed to a successful reconciliation. I'm hopeful that with continued effort, open communication, and mutual commitment, we can find a way to heal and rebuild our relationship, even as we face the ongoing challenges of overcoming past betrayals. Since the initial revelations and the progress we made in our reconciliation, there have been some additional confessions that have come to light. These disclosures have provided finer details that she initially withheld, adding a new layer of complexity to an already painful situation. The most significant and distressing new piece of information is that the AP might have ejaculated inside her, albeit not fully. She explained that he tried to finish inside her, despite their agreement not to do so. Based on her experience with me, she recognized the physical signs of his imminent climax, such as his increased intensity and changes in rhythm, and acted quickly to prevent him from fully doing so. In a moment of both anger and urgency, she kicked him off and rushed to the bathroom to clean herself, hoping to mitigate any potential damage. This additional detail has compounded my distress. The fact that he tried to override their agreement and that she had to take such drastic action adds another layer of betrayal to the already significant emotional wound. Although she was on birth control at the time and took precautions, knowing that he attempted to finish inside her and that she had to physically stop him has left me feeling even more unsettled. Despite her assurances of full honesty and her current effort to meet the full honesty condition as part of her remorse, the emotional impact of this new revelation is profound. As I grapple with these new details, I am finding it increasingly difficult to cope. The triggers are relentless. Every reminder of the past seems to reignite fresh waves of anguish. I often question whether our reconciliation efforts will ultimately be successful. The persistent pain and disorientation about the future of our relationship are overwhelming. I am deeply preoccupied with the potential impact of separation on our children. The idea of them grappling with a broken family, especially if they were to learn the truth, is heart-wrenching. The notion of our daughter discovering that our family was fractured due to infidelity is particularly distressing. My primary concern remains the well-being of our children. I constantly worry about how they would handle the emotional fallout of seeing their parents separated. The prospect of co-parenting, while a practical solution, feels like a painful reminder of the stability we might lose. The emotional toll of such a situation is not something I want to inflict upon them, especially given how much they rely on the stability and unity of our family unit. As I navigate through these turbulent emotions, I am trying to balance my own need for healing with the need to provide a stable environment for my children. The decision-making process is agonizing. The fear of causing further harm to my family weighs heavily on me, and I am grappling with whether to continue with our reconciliation efforts or face the reality that separation might be the only viable path forward. The journey is fraught with uncertainty, and the emotional pain is overwhelming. In my attempts to make sense of this situation, I find myself searching for strategies to manage the ongoing triggers and the lingering pain. I am also seeking guidance on how to move forward, whether through continued reconciliation or by making the difficult decision to separate. I would greatly appreciate hearing from others who have faced similar challenges. How did you cope with the triggers and the residual pain? What approaches did you find effective in moving forward, either in reconciliation or in making the decision to part ways? Your insights and experiences could provide valuable guidance as I work through these complex emotions and strive to find the best path forward for myself and my family. Ultimately, I hope to find a way to heal and to ensure that whatever decision we make is in the best interest of our children and our own emotional well-being. The road ahead is uncertain and deeply painful, but I am committed to seeking a resolution that brings the most peace and stability to our family, while also allowing me to come to terms with the betrayal and the impact it has had on all of us.